Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back for more news and politics. This is for November the 4th, 2023, which it is Saturday. It is Saturday. Okay, let's go over this. I haven't done one of these in a bit. Okay, Los Angeles mayor orders residential hotels to be used for temporary homeless housing. A 2008 city law intended hotels to be used as primary residencies to be preserved as safety net housing. But with little enforcement, some landlords had turned their buildings into tourist hotels. So, again, can't resist the want to make more money. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass issued an order Wednesday that allows the city to use residential hotel rooms, which by law are intended to be used as permanent housing for some of the city's poorest residents, to temporarily shelter homeless people. The order goes against the goals of a 2008 city law, which sought to preserve nearly 19,000 mostly bare bones residential hotel rooms as stable housing for low-income, disabled, and elderly Angelenos, who were increasingly being displaced by the development of condos and tourist hotels. If residential hotel owners want to convert their buildings into other uses, they must either replace the housing units or pay an equivalent fee to the city. The mayor's order comes nearly 4 months after a Capitol in Maine and ProPublica investigation found that at least 21 hotels were renting rooms to tourists and advertising on travel booking websites in apparent violation of the law. In response, the mayor's office ordered the city's housing department to investigate and account for the lapse in enforcement. Housing officials have issued citations to the owners of 17 of the hotels, ordering them to restore their rooms to residential use. All but one of the owners have appealed the order. See, this is one of the big problems with capitalism. You're really suggested, hey, make more money because we aren't in the job of fixing others' lives. We're here to make money. It's ridiculous. You see the same thing with capitalism used in healthcare in America. See, this is all free market BS. They talk about no regulations. That'll make the market move better. No, it won't. It'll just suggest to certain people who play the field that, yeah, screw people. I can make more money. Capitalism works best when properly regulated, and a lot of people don't like regulations because they can't just get richer and richer if it is properly regulated. This is also from ProPublica. Years ago, the all-white judges of a Louisiana appellate court decided in secret to systematically ignore petitions filed by prisoners, most of them black, who claim they have been unjustly convicted. And this is the story of a horrendous injustice and the three people who tried to expose it. It begins with a suicide note. The scandal that never happened. Two years into his 25-year sentence for attempted aggravated rape, Nathan Brown could tell the man sitting across from him, a jailhouse lawyer, improbably named Lawyer Winfield, was not going to get him out of prison. It was astounding to Brown that he was pinning his hopes on a fellow inmate who had an 8th grade education and whose formal legal training amounted to a prison paralegal course. But he knew more than I did, Brown said. Brown laid out for Winfield the details of his case. In the summer of 1997, a woman was assaulted in the courtyard of the apartment complex in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where Brown was living with his mother. The woman, who was white, fended off the attacker with her high-heeled shoe until he fled on a bicycle. The sheriff's deputies arrived. A security guard suggested they question Brown, one of the few black tenants in the complex. Surprise, surprise. It's the automatic suggestion of, oh, it's got to be a black guy. There's no other way it could be. No, it couldn't be a white man. Brown, 23 at the time, was in his pajamas rocking his baby daughter to sleep. The deputies put him in handcuffs and brought him to the victim. When she couldn't identify him, the officers allowed her to get close enough to smell him. She had told them her attacker had a foul body odor. Brown, she would later testify, smelled like soap. He must have showered immediately after, she speculated. In a trial that lasted 1 day, the jury found him guilty. After his appeal was rejected, he no longer had a right to an attorney provided by the state. Wow. He smelled like soap, so he may have showered. Really? Really? Seriously? It must be you. I know the guy was foul smelling, but you smell like soap, so you may have showered to cover your own tracks. Oh, jeez almighty. Winfield began translating Brown's grievances into a legal petition. He argued that Brown's lawyer had provided ineffective counsel. He had overlooked the most basic defense strategies, failed to challenge the discrepancies in the victim's story, and to insist on DNA testing. The two of them worked on the petition for months, so Brown was surprised when the Louisiana Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal delivered a rejection just 1 week later. The denial, a single sentence that didn't address any of Brown's claims, bore the names of 3 judges. But something didn't feel right. How could they return the ruling so quickly? Why was it so vague? Because they didn't want to sit there and deal with the whole thing. They just said, no, deny it. The answer to those questions would come years later in the suicide note of a high-level court employee who disclosed that the judges on the Fifth Circuit had decided in secret to ignore the petitions of prisoners who could not afford an attorney. It was a shocking revelation. In a state where police and prosecutorial misconduct frequently make national headlines and a stream of exonerations has revealed a criminal justice system still functioning in the shadow of slavery and Jim Crow. A group of white judges had decided that the claims of hundreds, perhaps thousands of inmates, most of them black, were not worth taking the time to read. Among those petitions was Brown's claim that a DNA test would have proven his innocence. A death at the courthouse. On a warm Monday morning in May of 2007, as the secretaries and clerks began filing through the glass doors of the Louisiana Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, Staff Director Gerald Peterson was inside his office with a 9mm Beretta pistol. A letter he had written to the court's 8 judges was making its way to the chambers of the Chief Judge Edward Dufresne Jr. Versions of that letter were en route to the Judiciary Commission, a panel responsible for investigating allegations of judicial misconduct, and to the Times-Picayune, the state's most influential paper. Peterson hoped the letter would unleash a massive scandal, one that he had helped perpetuate for more than a decade. 55 years old, Peterson had long been a fixture at the courthouse, and he reminded the judges that he had kept their secrets, clearing contempt charges against their friends and fixing traffic tickets whenever they asked. But he focused his rage on one secret in particular: their handling of appeals sent to the court by prisoners who claimed they'd been unjustly convicted. Louisiana requires that a panel of 3 judges review all such petitions, known as pro se petitions, a Latin phrase that means for oneself. But Peterson wrote that the judges had instructed him to ignore the law and dispose of the appeals on his own. Dufresne, he explained, signed off on the documents without so much as a glance. The implications were staggering. Over 12 years, the Fifth Circuit, which is responsible for reviewing challenges from trial courts in 4 parishes, had disregarded at least 5,000 pro se petitions from Louisiana prisoners, according to the court's records. The inmates ranged from people convicted of murder to non-violent offenders sent away for life. Many had limited education and struggled to present their arguments in the language of the courts. If Peterson's accusations were true, none of the judges had ever laid eyes on their claims. Peterson, who was known to keep his door open, didn't answer the business services manager when she came to tell him that Dufresne wanted to see him. the chief judge instructed her to have the head of security unlock the door. As he slid in his pass key, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the building. So yeah, he was culpable in it as well, but his conscience, it shows he at least had a soul. His conscience got to him. And so he's like, I have to fix things. And at points like that, when you know you ruined so many lives, it's hard to live with. At least we know he had humanity. Now, metro area population density distribution population per square mile. So yeah, we have rural, suburban, or exurban, sparse suburban, suburban, dense suburban, urban, dense urban, and very dense urban. So remember that setup here. Dark red down to orange is like more in the city areas. And these are supposed to be the 10 most populated cities. Where did it say they were? 50 most populated cities in the US and Canada. So Los Angeles and New York City, of course, at the top. Rural areas, you know, all these. It's when we get up here that they're urban areas. And over half of the population, it looks like, for New York and Los Angeles, live in the urban areas. So yeah, New York City in particular, look at the dark red. It's bigger than Los Angeles's dark red and light red. Next city is Chicago. Rural, urban, when you're getting into the yellow, the light yellow. So yeah, the suburban is what these are. And then you get up in the urban, it's not so many people packed into the urban center for Chicago. It's still about 30% of the people, give or take a little bit, but yeah. Now, you notice the next two cities, they're spread out. There's not many living right in the city. What cities are these? Dallas and Houston. So yeah, then we get Toronto and DC. Toronto's pretty heavy on urban. DC, not so much. Which, the actual district itself, District of Columbia, is a pretty big area. So, you'll notice the majority of them are suburban. They're like Dallas and Houston. But yeah, Toronto's heavily urban. Miami, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Atlanta's got a few in the rural area there, quite a bit. Oh, about 30% of the population, yeah. Miami's very suburban. Philadelphia, it's a bit suburban. But yeah. Let's see. Look at the urban. Atlanta has very little actually living in the city. It's mostly just businesses. So yeah. Now let's go move over here. Boston, Phoenix, San Fran. Boston's got a lot of rural. Phoenix, not many people live directly in the urban areas. Shoot, it don't even have a light red or a dark red. So that's intriguing. Again, it's probably very much like Atlanta, where it's mostly businesses in the metro area. Riverside, which is not far from Los Angeles. They got a little bit of rural. Riverside, Detroit, Montreal. Montreal might be more suburban, though, than the others. Well, I mean, it's got quite a few urban in Montreal. Riverside and Detroit are very suburban. So, yeah. We've got a number of cities. We'll not look at all 50, but yeah, we'll look at some of the standouts here. You can see some of the urban standouts. Vancouver, which is in Western Canada. It's like one of the biggest cities in Canada, right up there with Toronto. Which Toronto itself is heavily urban as well. The one that really strikes me, though, look at this. Very dense in the city, New York City. Very little suburb. And just really not much urban or rural environments at all. Same here. Look at that. Tiny, tiny. Now, some of these cities have huge rural environments. Whoa. Clicked on the wrong thing there. There we go. Yeah, this one right here, light green and dark green. That's exurban and rural. Nashville. It's quite big up there with more rural lands. Here we got another one. Look at all the rural and exurban. And it is Charlotte, North Carolina. Those are definitely the two most rural out of the 50 most populous cities in the U.S. and Canada. So, yeah. Nashville and Charlotte. I'm a lot closer to Charlotte than I am Nashville, even though they are connected to each other as states that are just below me, below the state I live in. But yeah, Charlotte's a lot closer. Problem with traveling across Tennessee, it's so stretched and long. It's like, this takes forever. So yeah. Alright. Photo here. Mexican athletes prior to boarding the SS Majestic en route to the 1924 Summer Olympics. From left to right, we have Major Manuel Solis, who for champion shot. Alfredo Cuellar, the team captain. Jesus Aguirre, or Aguirre, shot put. Francisco Contreras, long jump. Poor guy. Ruben Solis, team mascot. It's like, really? And Pedro Curiel, middle distance runner. There's more of the photo if you didn't get to see it. Yeah, there's team mascot. I'm like, really, guys? Why? Why do we need this in 1924, 100 years ago? Alright, let's get into some actual news here. South American countries, this is from The Guardian, South American countries recall ambassadors and cut ties with Israel over war with Hamas, which I don't even call it a war. It's a genocide. It went well past self-defense. Seriously. It's like, I think they killed all of 13 members of Hamas the last I'd heard. But, you know, they've killed over 9,000 people altogether in Gaza. So yeah, Bolivia's left-wing government cuts diplomatic ties with Israel, alleging crimes and human rights abuses in Gaza, as Chile and Colombia recall their ambassadors. And I don't blame them one bit. Now, here, I've actually got two articles set up for this. One from the Daily Beast and one from Salon. Alabama mayor kills self after right-wing blog outs his cross-dressing. Although Salon says it a bit different. Are you happy now? Alabama mayor dies by suicide after being outed as transgender. So one says cross-dressing, one says transgender. F.L. Bubba Copeland, who also served as a community pastor, was outed involuntarily by a conservative news blog. Yeah. Bubba Copeland, mayor of Smith Station, Alabama, and pastor of First Baptist Church in Phoenix City, was found dead Friday evening from a self inflicted gunshot wound after being involuntarily outed as a transgender woman by a local conservative news blog. And of course, Daily Beast, again, they said just cross-dressing. Bubba Copeland shot himself in front of police on Friday, days after he begged 1819 News not to expose his private life. And honestly, they shouldn't. It is a private life. You have the right to do in your own private time whatever is legal, you can do. But of course, it's the right wings, the right wing asshats, who are all like, we've got to reveal your things because we might find something in it. You know, like they did with Hunter Biden's nude pics. They're like, see, this proves something. We haven't figured it out yet, but it proves something. Oh, Jesus Christ. And it's... If you want to go after Joe Biden, go after Joe Biden. But going after Hunter Biden, a private citizen, no, that's not the way you do things, dumbasses. But you don't care. There's a reason I despise Republicans. Democrats suck. They don't get anything done, but Republicans purposely go out of their way to try to hurt people. And this is a post I found interesting from SciPost. Moderate coffee and tea intake linked to lower risk of cognitive decline. So you drink that tea and coffee, it will help. Do they mention whether it has to be hot tea or cold tea? Drinking moderate amounts of coffee or tea can decrease the risk of cognitive disorders such as dementia, according to a recent study published in Nutrition Reviews. Age-related cognitive disorders such as Alzheimer's disease place a huge burden upon individuals that, and the healthcare system. Current therapeutic drugs are limited in their potential to treat these disorders, and thus attention could be shifted toward targeting risk factors that can be managed. Coffee and tea have been part of human diets for centuries, but the effect of caffeine on brain health, especially the risk of developing cognitive disorders, have been a topic of such debate among researchers due to inconsistent results between studies. To prove a more definitive answer, researchers from China Medical University led by Ying Zhu and Chunxiang Hu performed an updated review of the literature. This included conducting a meta-analysis, which is in essence a large investigation. What I'm kind of curious on is what I've already said. Does it matter if the tea's hot or cold? Can it just be like iced tea? I don't drink as much hot tea as I used to. I do need to get back into it. But I drink a lot of cold tea. Anyway. Next story. 2 women face terror charges after paraglider images displayed at pro-Palestine march in London. The pair are accused of carrying or displaying an article to arouse reasonable suspicion that they are supporters of Hamas. This is from Sky News. Now, this is in England. Their laws are different. But in the U.S., you have freedom of speech as long as you are not purposely causing any kind of pain by saying what you say. Otherwise, you have a freedom to say what you wish. To a point. See, like with Donald Trump, the problem wasn't that he denied that he lost the election. It was what ended up being found that not only did he really believe he won, he didn't. But he had others trying to fix things in his favor. And that's where the crime comes in. If he hadn't been doing all this and had just been like, I believe I won, the votes were in my favor, he would have been fine if he hadn't been trying to make deals to have votes changed to his favor. So yeah. But in England, you can be brought up on charges for slightly more things. But this is from Ynet. Ambulance attacked in Gaza transported Hamas terrorists and weapons, according to the IDF. Several terrorists killed, IDF holds information that Hamas uses ambulances for transport. Military also reports that intelligence recovered from captured Hamas base inside Gaza Strip. So, are you trying to say that gives you the right to destroy and, bomb and kill every ambulance and whoever's on it? Because, they might be Hamas! What if they're actual regular citizens? You don't care about that, though, do you? You've shown that over and over that you don't care about average citizens. This is from Hot Air. Japan and Philippines to negotiate defense pact, and China is not happy about it. There have been several recent incidents where China has done its best to bully the Philippines in the South China Sea. Those incidents haven't gone unnoticed by some of China's neighbors. Now Japan and the Philippines are teaming up to create a new defense pact. Japan's Prime Minister headed to the Philippines today for 2 days of talks. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida of Japan said on Friday that his country would start formal talks with the Philippines to allow the deployment of Japanese troops to the Southeast Asian country, further strengthening ties between two countries that have embraced each other as bulwarks against China. We share serious concerns on the situation in the East China Sea and South China Sea, Mr. Kishida said, referring to Beijing's increasingly assertive actions in the region. The attempt to unilaterally change the status quo by force is unacceptable. The proposed pact, known as a reciprocal access agreement would give the Japanese military access to bases in the Philippines and make it easier to conduct more joint drills. The agreement won't be limited to more access and more drills. Japan will also be giving Philippines some very practical help in the form of new radar systems. So yeah, Japan feels like it had a grip that it was the big dog in the East, and it don't like other powers teaming together, no matter how much it outsizes them. So yeah, this is from the BBC. Ukraine war. Zelensky says Israel-Gaza conflict taking focus away from fighting. I've already said this. You all should have already been at the negotiation table, because neither side has gained ground. We're expending stocks we have of ammo. At this point, tell Russia, say, hey, you didn't conquer us. We've been able to do very little. So I think the eastern territories that Russia tries to proclaim it, legally took through war, should be returned back to Ukraine. As far as Crimea, look, I would prefer it to go back to Ukraine, but I understand that it's already been in Russian hands for several years now. So, honestly, that's where I think we should stand. Because neither side really made any grounds. And to continue a war where it's just become nothing more than a war of attrition, trying to wait each other out, see who has the more deaths and everything, it's time for that to end. That, end the war now. Like I said, give the eastern territories back to Ukraine, and Russia can keep Crimea. Like I said, I'd prefer it to go back to Ukraine, because that makes more goddamn sense, since it's on the very bottom of Ukraine and doesn't touch anything of Russia. But since it's been in Russian hands for several years now, from the Times of Israel, protesters rally outside Netanyahu's home in Jerusalem, call on him to resign. Yeah, protesters calling for the release of captives held by Hamas terrorists in Gaza rally outside Prime Minister Netanyahu's home in Jerusalem. Yeah, Netanyahu gained power and has held power because he's like, I am the defense candidate. I ensure that Israel shall always be safe with me as prime minister, which of course has proven not to be the case. That's the reason so many people in Israel are wanting him to resign. It's not the treatment necessarily of the Palestinian people. because most of them have been kind of brainwashed into thinking the Palestinian people are all subhuman, like many in America are brainwashed into believing certain things. Like, oh, communism bad! Oh, America great! You know, that kind of shit. So, yeah. Now, let's move this down here. The largest anti-war protest since the Iraq War is taking place in Washington, D.C. Hundreds have gathered to denounce the genocide that Israel is committing in Palestine. I mean, look at that throng of masses. So many people are like, yeah, this needs to end. And like I said, we've got protests all over the world, you know, saying we need a ceasefire. In a foreboding turn of events, Palestinian workers in Israel are being sent back to war-torn Gaza with ID numbers. So yeah, in Jerusalem, in Israel in general, there are certain workers from Gaza who are allowed to work, but they're paid far less, and they're expected to get up much earlier than the average Israeli worker. So yeah. Yeah, look at the numbers. They're tagging them like they're animals they're trying to keep track of or something. You know, instead of proper IDs, they prefer to try to tag them like they're animals. Thousands of protesters are in front of Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. They're calling on him to resign. Yeah, Netanyahu's made his bed. He now must lie in it. And I get the feeling that's why he's so aggressive in his campaign of genocide. Instead of, you know, going in at the start, using caution and trying to go into the tunnels, look how long he just bombed and 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 bombed. Yeah. He knew that with what they had done and the disagreement by many Israelis over his attempts to reform the courts to his liking, he knew he's in trouble. So I get the feeling a lot of what he committed was done out of an attempt to be like, see, I'm here for you. Sorry, Bibi. You are not. And this is the last video. GOP State Representative Scott Bottoms, who said Jewish hostages held by Hamas needed to find Jesus, now says there's no such thing as the Palestinian people. Oh goodness, let's listen to this craziness. Back.
The Republican state representative who said that Jewish people under attack in Israel need to find Jesus has now turned his keen ability to offend on Palestinians, saying there is no such thing as the Palestinian people, they're just terrorists. Representative Scott Bottoms...
Really? Palestinian people aren't real, they're just a nation state of terrorists. Seriously, dude? Seriously. Again, Republicans aren't there to be your friends. They're there to make their rich donors richer. And attack people they see as being open to their assaults. Again, Democrats suck. They don't do anything to help America. But God knows Republicans actually go out of their way to purposely hurt people.
This is also a pastor in Colorado Springs. He regularly speaks in church about the war between Israel and Hamas. First, Representative Bottoms said that Jewish people held hostage by Hamas need to turn to Jesus. He suggested that the Israeli and U.S. governments knew in advance about the Hamas attacks. And now, Representative Bottoms is saying that the Palestinian people don't exist, they're just a group of terrorists.
Did you know that there is no such thing as the Palestinian people? That's not a thing.
Then what the fuck has been there for the last few hundred years, dumbass? Yes, they were all under the Ottoman Empire, but the area was known as Palestine. It had Palestinian people. You know, there is no Kurdish state, but the Kurds are a real group of people. I hate dumbasses like him.
That's a made-up thing. It was a terrorist organization that has just been sitting there for so long now that they have squatters' rights, and now the whole world, under the influence of Satan, the whole world is calling this the Palestinian people.
Democratic State House Speaker Julie McCluskey reprimanded Bottoms this week, called his comments about both Jews and Palestinians deeply offensive. Speaker McCluskey said they are part of a pattern of Bottoms' quote, bigoted and dangerous comments. Should note, McCluskey and Democratic Majority Leader Monica Duran also publicly denounced comments made by Democratic State Representative Tim Hernandez last month. Hernandez liked a series of tweets that appeared to mock the initial Hamas attack on Israel. Hernandez has since publicly apologized.
Seriously, who votes for monsters like these? Who's sitting there going, I like the way he talks about that minority group? how we should treat them. He makes a lot of sense. Fucking hell. Seriously. Fuck. Anyway. Fucking imbeciles in Congress. Yeah. Anyway. I think we'll go ahead and end this episode there. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.